Orphe Divounguy joins us again, chief economist at the Illinois Policy Institute in Chicago. Orphe, welcome back to the show. Thanks for giving us some of your time.
Oh, thanks for having me, John. It's always my pleasure.
We do this Mincing Rascals podcast with one of your colleagues, Austin Berg, over there, and he's always a pleasure to talk to, too. So
that's right. Austin is the smartest guy on staff.
I don't know that that's true, but I know he's the smartest guy on our podcast. He's a very bright, passionate young man about issues that a lot of us don't care to think about. So he's a welcome addition to that, as you are to this broadcast. You are looking at the composition of the workforce, who's working, who's not working, and you kind of broke that down a little bit. What have you discovered, Orphe?
Oh, that's right. Women were disproportionately affected by COVID-19 when compared to similar men, so they lost more jobs. And since then, nearly 100,000 women dropped out of the labor force, in the last quarter from March to June. And that's a combination of fewer job opportunities, but also the absence of in-person schooling, limited child care options, are really forcing women out of the labor force.
Women end up taking on more of those roles and responsibilities than men, huh?
That's right. Women are most talented, most skilled, and most productive workers. If you're in the state of Illinois, you got 51% of prime working age women have a college degree compared to only 43% of men. And that's partly why in previous recessions, men were first to lose their jobs. So women tend to stay active even in recessions. But unfortunately, they still spend roughly 46% more time taking care of children when they have children in the household. And so when you have fewer job opportunities available, and on top of that, you have the kids at home, you tend to see more women leave the labor force.
So is that a problem with the solution? I mean, are you suggesting that more men be on the sidelines and the women take those jobs because they are more academically qualified? I mean, what do we do about that? No. We need a growing labor force, right? If we want to see the economy recover, we need our work. We need more jobs. We need to bring people back from the sidelines, right? So we need more workers, and we need more productive workers. But unfortunately, policy at the state level, especially right here in Illinois, could actually exacerbate the damage. It could push more people out instead of in. And that's because, our governor is currently spending over $50 million of his own personal fortune to promote a progressive income tax that would actually hit over 100,000 small businesses with higher rates. And those businesses, those small businesses, are the largest job creators in the state. In fact, S corps, right? Some of these smaller enterprises are going to face 5 times the tax increase that larger corporations, that C corps, would face under Pritzker's progressive income tax. And we know, if I was listening to your podcast, to your previous guest, that some of these larger corporations have actually been profitable, while the smaller businesses are on the brink of failure. Is that called pass-through, where you talk about the income that a business earns and it actually being reflected on the taxes of an individual?
That's right. Some of these pass-throughs will pay the ordinary income tax, but then you have a couple of business taxes that are added on top of that under the new progressive income tax proposal that is out there. And so we really worry about that, right? So we don't want government shouldn't be promoting policies that penalize that penalize job creators, because of course, if you have less job creation and on top of that limited child care options, you're raising the cost of child care, and you're keeping women, especially, out of the labor force.
But I ask that to ask this because I see that that's a problem that needs to be addressed. But I know a lot of people just think that in terms of ordinary income, people who make a lot of money in this state aren't paying their fair share. They call it a fair tax sometimes. I don't entirely agree with that language, but I don't like the word fair, but I understand the sort of frustration people have when they think that the highest wage earners are not paying their fair share.
Yeah, and that's a myth. That's a complete myth. The largest, the people who pay the largest burden of taxation in Illinois even under a flat tax, are those who bring in the most revenue, and some of those people are small business owners who pay taxes like you and I, and of course they're paying taxes, but those people are employers, and there's a ton of research that actually shows that those tax increases could act as a barrier to entry for many businesses, for some of the smaller businesses, thus in fact helping the bigger, larger corporations, because essentially what you're doing is you're limiting their competition, right? So, if you have large corporations that can kind of afford some of these tax increases, the smaller guys that are essentially the largest job creators are kept out of the market, and so you create these markets that are not as competitive as they should be, and that actually exacerbates the income inequality that J.B. Pritzker wants to fix.
Do you not like a graduated federal income tax then?
It's about tax competition, right? So we have a state of Illinois where, every state faces the same federal income tax. But then in Illinois, you have to compete with neighbor states. You have to compete with Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana. And what you don't want is a high burden of taxation, a lower service provision in Illinois, because ultimately you're going to have a lot of these, people Illinoisans moving to other states. And we've seen that. In the last decade, we've lost more people to other states than the number of people who came in. We've had this huge out-migration. It's not just the out-migration of people, it's their wallet. They take their wallets with them. They take their incomes. They take jobs with them. And so we lose out to a number of neighbor states that are essentially implementing much better policies.
Handicap this last question for you, then handicap this new tax plan of the governor's. How do you think that's going to go, Orphe?
A robust economic recovery is going to depend crucially on tax breaks, for small business owners, for individuals. Ultimately, we really want people to come back into the labor force, right? So if you don't have a robust labor force growth, you're not going to have a robust recovery.
But giving a break to those people, is that going to ensure that they hire people back, or is it possible that they won't?
Well, the first thing is, of course, we've got to get rid of this COVID threat, right? The COVID threat is still looming over us. And again, government completely failed us at all levels in terms of the COVID threat. We've got to get rid of the COVID threat. We have to be able to reopen our schools safely and get these child care options back on the table so we can attract our most productive workers back into the labor force. And we're not going to do that by penalizing job creators.
Orphe Divounguy is the chief economist over at the Illinois Policy Institute. You hear him frequently here on the Wintrust Business Lunch. Nice to hear you today, Orphe. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, John.